Thought I'd do a fairly short demo in kind of basics of UVs in Blender, which really just kind of covers just basics of UVs regardless of software. So the general concept, general idea with UVs is that you need basically a flattened version of your 3D models that you're creating what's called a UV layout. It's like a new two-dimensional coordinate system U's and V's. And the idea is you need that flattened version to be able to do texturing. The idea being that you can take the UVs and you can kind of superimpose various types of textures, two-dimensional pixel information related to the location of those UVs, and then when it kind of rewraps back on the 3D model, everything is nicely aligned and positioned. So necessary evil, maybe that'll change at some point, but let's see what we got here. So I want to start off with a cube. Shift A, add mesh cube, and I'm going to switch over to UV editing. You're going to notice that I have swapped my 3D view and my 2D or UV view. I do also have some add-ons. As an aside, Mio 3 is, I believe, a free extension that is included with Blender. You just have to enable it. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You can look for that elsewhere. You're going to notice that when we look at this, there's already this flattened version of the cube. So many objects, when you create them, primitives will already have UVs. You don't have to settle for these UVs. They're not always good UVs, but oftentimes, or I think always, they're there. I'm going to actually delete that and just show you once again. If I go to Shift A, add mesh cube, and if I open up this little pop-up down here, you're going to see the default behavior is the generated UVs are checked off. You'll notice if I turn that off, you actually don't have UVs, whether I go to edit mode or not. Okay? So actually, I'm going to keep that one so that I can start fresh with no UVs. Now, if you want to add mesh cube and you have already got one with UVs, you can always just do something like this where I go to edit mode, tab into edit mode, and then I'm going to use the U menu, which is for various UV mapping types, and I'll get to this in a second, but I'll just do something like a just project from view. This will just kind of like give you a reset. All right. Now, one way I've been known to explain UV mapping, UV unwrapping, UV seams is having basically an infinite supply of gift wrap. And the idea is that with this gift wrap, you can cut it into as many shapes and whatever shapes you want, where you can start to attach them or sort of paste them directly on the surface of your model and have them all kind of lined up and sort of fitted next to one another, almost like a puzzle, so that they cover every square inch of your model. Now, the way this is done, it's based off of your edges. So I'm going to tab back into edit mode and switch to edit to edge selection. Okay, so you can see I'm selecting edges, and any edge you select, you can right-click and mark it as a seam. Now you'll notice when I deselected that, in my case, I've got my theme set up so it's red. I don't know if that's the default or not, but that is my indication that that is not just an edge, but it is a seam as well. Now I can actually select multiple edges, and again, right-click, mark seam, and now you can see I've selected some of those, and I'm actually going to switch over to the side here and grab these three, mark seam. Now what I've done there is you can see this is the sort of front-facing face, so to speak, that's facing forward along the depth axis or the y-axis. And what I've done is I've done this a million times where I've just basically kept all four edges along that front face uncut or not with seams, and then basically I've kind of started to separate these three faces, left, top, and right, otherwise. And the idea is that these are now, this is going to allow them to sort of spread outwards nicely. So now if I want, I can just select all, and then again hit U. I'm going to do what's called a unwrap. Where is it? Oh, they've got, this is a new version of Blender. I'm going to do this to angle based. And you can just see it's essentially what we had to start with. It's upside down, but that's all right. You can always, for instance, just select all over here and do something like with Mio, you can do like 180-degree rotation, and now you've got essentially the same thing. So just to give you a little hint or an idea of why we're doing this, I talked about this a moment ago about how this is a necessary evil, so to speak, for doing your texturing. I'm going to quickly add in a new material. I'm going to go over to my base color here, and I'm going to create a new image texture. And then in there, I actually have to create a new texture for that. If I want to draw something, I'll just call this color. And I don't really need this to have an alpha channel, and I'll leave it alone at the 1024 by 1024 pixels. New image. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to texture paint, and you're going to see we have that image I just generated, which you can see is totally black, and you can see that black texture has now been assigned to or applied to the entire cube. Now if I go over here and I say draw a little something right there, you're going to see that this face right there, sure enough, there's that front face that I had singled out earlier. So you can see how as I'm drawing here, and I'm going to use some just sort of change my brush size, I can also draw across these different faces, and you can see how it's doing this nice job of drawing across those faces here in the 3D view. So again, necessary if you want to start getting into image textures. This is setting aside stuff related to like procedural texturing. This is really applicable for image textures. All right, so I'm going to go back to my layout. And so that was the basics for a cube. Now, very commonly, it's nice to these are really simple objects, and I'm not going to cover complex UVs for more complex shapes in this video. I'm just going to cover a couple or a few simple objects, primitives. But I'm going to add in Shift A, Mesh, Cylinder, and again, we've already got Generate UV set. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those just so I can start from scratch. Now, this one is probably a better way of thinking about more when you're getting to more complex shapes, UV more complex shapes. In specific, you should start to think about these caps, the top and the bottom caps, or if this is rotated side to side caps, and then separately all of the sides. The idea being that in order to get a nice kind of complete and flattened unwrap here, we want to completely separate these caps from the sides. We didn't do that with the cube. The cube was all just a single UV island, but we're going to separate this into 3 separate islands, okay? So I'm going to switch over to UV editing. I'm going to ditch that image. We don't need that anymore. So we don't have any UVs at this point because I had turned them off when I created this thing. And now what I'm going to do is, again, switch to edge selection. I'm going to Alt left click to select that whole top edge loop. Again, right click, mark seam. I can do the same. I'm just clicking off the deselect. I'm going to Alt left click on the bottom, right click, mark seam. You can also shift to just add these two if you wanted to do it all at once. So now you're going to notice I have these red edges all around the complete borders of the top and bottom caps or faces. Now if I hit A and then go to U, unwrap, you can see that I have, I'm going to switch over to face selection, I have the top and bottom faces, and I have the sides. Now this is most of the way there. This is the way I typically suggest people think about starting their UVs, is start by separating all of the parts, all of the different islands, and then worry about the flattening of them. Now this part, these two over here are already flattened. You can see they're just nice flat faces to begin with. So when I hit that unwrap angle based, it just did a nice job of creating perfectly circular, flattened islands. I'm thinking Maya back in the day. Whereas the side island over here, that's not well flattened. That's because we need to think of this in terms of that gift wrap. And if you were to take a piece of gift wrap and perfectly surround these sides or cover these sides, you'd probably want to do it with a rectangular shaped piece of gift wrap. And you can think of this also, for instance, like a water bottle. These sort of plastic water bottles that you get at the store, just a branded one, where there is some kind of a plastic label typically that's around the center part of the bottle. And if you look closely, those labels will have a seam. Basically, it's another rectangular shape that basically allows them to wrap a rectangular label around a cylindrical shape. In other words, what we need to do is anywhere that we want to, just select any one of these vertical edges. You don't need to select more than one. You just need one seam. I'm just going to choose this one over on the side there. Actually, sorry, that's in the that's along the y-axis, but that's fine. I'm going to right-click, mark seam, and then anytime you want to, you can just go ahead and do a new unwrap. By the way, I'm just each time hitting A to select all, then U, unwrap angle based, and you're going to see, sure enough, now I have the top and the bottom islands, and then this other island, which is this long rectangle, which is in fact all of those sides. And so that will now allow you to do a nice kind of clean and predictable kind of texturing. Now, just because I'll just show one other object that a torus shape, which can be a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to leave my UV editor open for this. Add mesh torus. Again, I'm going to turn off generate UVs. By the way, you may notice that with them on, the UVs are actually kind of, I don't know, borderline worthless, I think it's fair to say. But we're going to create sort of more useful UVs, so I'm going to turn those off. Go into edit mode again. Again, I'm in edge selection. And so the way I might typically do this, and I want to pause for a second and talk about this sort of philosophy of where you create your seams. This is something which I tell people a lot. You're going to learn some basics here, and if you ever have anybody show you UVs and where they make their seams, that's kind of nice, but there's no substitute for practice. If you lay out the UVs, if you make the seams for 5 objects, 10 objects, 50 objects, you're just going to start to understand, you're just going to start to get the rhythms of where it makes sense to make these seams. Now, there are some philosophies, but that's basically my philosophy. Practice makes perfect, or practice kind of gives you the feel for where to make these seams. So in this case, I'm going to just Alt left click, create a little edge loop selection over there. Again, right click, mark seam. Okay, and that's going to allow this torus shape to sort of have ends. It's going to allow it to sort of spread out to create more of like a tube shape over here. Now I could try and do an unwrap. I mean, anytime you want to, you can try and unwrap. And it's not really quite what we want yet. It's on its way. I'm going to go ahead and now add in an additional cut. And this is actually, if you think about it, this is really kind of like a bent cylinder. A cylinder that's kind of like got the top and the bottom caps are sort of fused at that point over here. In other words, just like before when we did the cylinder, when we had to worry about unwrapping or flattening the sides, we also want to have some kind of lengthwise seam. So I'm going to select, in this case, I'll just do that inner edge loop right in the center there, right click, mark seam, and again, A to select all, U to unwrap angle based, and now you can see it's not exactly a rectangle, but it's much closer to a rectangle. Now you could turn this into a perfect rectangular island if you wanted to. You'll end up getting a little distortion when it comes to some textures, but sometimes that's actually an acceptable sort of compromise. So actually, luckily, this same little extension, Neo3, can rectangularize this. I'm not sure if that's the exact word. I believe it is right here, Rectify. And you can see it's got slight kind of like bowing here and there, but it's on its way. I can't remember if there's another option for doing a more perfect, kind of like with all verticals and horizontals, but this gives you just a general idea of how you might unwrap a torus. So hopefully that gives you a sort of good grounding, a good basis for how to start thinking about UVs in Blender.